Super pumped to have some awesome guests with us, Dr. Tracy Wilen and Dr. Courtney Vien. I don't know if I said it right. Sorry, Courtney, but they are authors of Employed for Life, an awesome book. And Greg, you and I have been talking about how employment is changing in the early part of our podcast. So we're going to talk about some of these things. So Courtney, she is an associate editor actually at the AICPA, so she writes for them. And Dr. Tracy Wilen is a global researcher and speaker, has been scholar at Stanford and executive in Palo Alto and all this stuff. So we're pumped to have both of them. Thank you, Tracy, for being with us.
Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you, Courtney. You're there too, right?
Right. Thank you.
Awesome. And I know Courtney has had laryngitis, so we're hoping your voice feels better through this. Well, I want to kick it off. Okay, so Tracy, I'm very interested in the book Employed for Life. So why did you want to write this, or why did you think it need to be written?
Well, actually, it's a lead on from previous books that I've written, looking at how technology is really changing the landscape of work, people's skills, people's education, and people's careers. And I felt that we have to provide constant information and transparency about how the world has changed and how modern day careers are being developed.
Are things getting better or worse? Like, is it more exciting? Like, is the research showing you it's more exciting, or is it getting worse for careers? I don't know.
Oh, I think there's a lot more options today than in the past, and that's what makes it exciting. But at the same time, it confuses a lot of people because the structures and the systems have completely changed. And it's much more flexibility, much more technology, many more choices. And so the onus is upon us now to really manage our careers rather than expecting an organization to manage it for us.
Wow. So Greg and I, we're Gen Xers, so we're kind of early to mid 40s. And so our parents, the baby boomers, certainly would look for a job and try to be there until they retire at age 65. But you're saying 65 is not the retirement age anymore.
Well, that's correct. I mean, let's just look at the logic. You probably read the press like I do. There's a lot of materials out there saying that we're living longer. I mean, they're developing pills so that we can live to 175. And we can deconstruct babies' DNA, hopefully, so they live to 140.
My God.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that we're living longer, and you probably know someone who's lived to 100.
Yeah.
Which means your work span is increasing. Where your parents may have said you work 25 years or 30 years, your reality today is you're going to be working 50 or 60 years. And that's a completely different landscape. You'll outlive companies.
Wow.
You'll go through many transitions, technology transitions. Society will change dramatically. And so that's a different way to approach career development.
Okay, so that sounds like I was dead wrong, Jason, in what I was thinking about in terms of lifespan right now. So with that incredible amount of time that we'll be living, what does that? How does that fundamentally change the strategy that workers have this day when they're looking at? I mean, that almost seems overwhelming, having that much time ahead of us to work.
That's right. That's right. So, one of the big shifts, like your parents, as you mentioned, the boomers, went into companies and the companies took over their career management for them. And they were somewhat assured that they would just stay there. And today we don't have those assurances anymore. So to avoid being overwhelmed, what Courtney and I have written about is really you have to start thinking about your own life plan, a more integrated plan. And it could be one sheet of paper of just saying, okay, what am I going to do in my 20s? Because that's going to impact my 30s. What do I do in my 30s? Because that's going to impact what happens to me in my 80s or 90s. And it's much more integrated today. You have to look at work, family, financials, social life, hobbies, and start to think through what would you like to be doing at 65? Because you probably have 30 more years ahead of you at 65.
So I love this. Now, I think there's going to be some public accounting firm owners listening to us. And again, it's not the stodgy baby boomers. They are not listening to our podcast. But the younger people, I would hope it would give them, it would make them excited. But I imagine there are some people who this gives them a lot of fear. If you're saying, like you say in the book, you need to become more of an entrepreneurial employee, I think is what you
Yes.
said. Some people are fearful, and some people see it as a great opportunity. Is that true?
Yeah. So when I look at accounting, so I think anyone who's in accounting has a leg up. Quite frankly,
Oh, cool.
it's a high demand sector and industry. As some of the people that we interviewed noted, that you can be an accountant well into your 90s. You
Yep.
can still you
Sure.
can be in a walker in a wheelchair, but if your brain is active and
Right.
so I think accounting is one of those unique areas that you can be employed for life for, which is very exciting. Whether it's you're in a big accounting firm or a small firm or on your own, like many of our people that we interviewed, we talked to people who are in large firms, small firms, and then independents. It's a skill that you can keep for life.
Right. Okay. So Courtney, in the excerpt that you from Employed for Life that you sent over to us, one of the things that you mentioned in there is the acronym. Is it VUCA with a V? Is that
It's a little more polite. It's VUCA with a long V.
VUCA? Okay, right. Because I didn't know. So VUCA. If So it's not
Yeah.
okay. Good. Thank you for that. So VUCA, which stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So knowing that that's and that be we'll explain that and help me realize why I'm not supposed to just pee my pants thinking about 50 more years of a career in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous work environment.
Oh, I mean, there is definitely room for anxiety. I mean, VUCA is an acronym from the military the U.S. military who realized warfare was getting more complex and uncertain and ambiguous. And we're seeing this happen in the job market. We're seeing it happen in the stock market. We're seeing it happen in the balance of power in different countries. And it's affecting the way that we work, and it's affecting the way we find jobs.
Which I think is why you guys said for employees to become entrepreneurs. Which let me just ask a question about that. If my employees are becoming entrepreneurs, does that mean they want to leave my firm and go start their own firm? Because I don't want them doing that. Or did you
Right.
mean something different, Dr. Wilen, in them becoming more entrepreneurial?
Sure. So let me kind of explain this concept of the entrepreneurial employee and how it fits into VUCA. Firms are really equating themselves a lot like the military. You don't know what's going to happen in the battlefield, and whether it's a startup who's taking pieces of your business to natural disasters that are wiping out your distribution channels, or data, right? Data security, like the Sony case. There's a lot of complexities today that didn't exist in the past. A lot of it driven by technology, a lot of it driven by just society changing. And so companies are saying, employees, we need leaders in our companies who are really more like first responders. They can take these obstacles out of the way. They can deal with these complexities and the volatility and help us survive as a company. Now, the entrepreneurial employee fits into that because we're really looking for employees who can approach their job with not as a task, but as, I am the CEO of my job. How do I contribute every day and keep moving this company ahead in this very volatile and complex environment and all of these unknowns? And so this is like a higher skilled person today that really companies are looking for. In fact, we term it the transdisciplinarity or T person, someone who has breadth and depth and is technical, can make a lot of strategic decisions, not compared to the past employee that just came in and did a task job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's my issue. So we get these great new employees, and they really are more entrepreneurial, and they think of their jobs, and they become the CEO of their position. But they really need to mesh with the mindset of their employer too, because employers sometimes are still in an old school mindset. They're kind of locked down in hierarchy. They're
Yep.
not into these flat organizations. They want to micromanage the heck out of people. And so
Yep.
these generations are bumping into each other, and it seems like that's going to continue to be an issue more and more in the future.
Well, your point is well taken. There are a lot of companies that are still very hierarchical and traditional. However, there's a number of companies that are realizing to be able to retain employees and attract employees, they have to do things differently. And accounting firms are one of these groups that are definitely paying attention and looking at work environment, looking at work-life balance, looking at offerings, and perks. What can I do to create an environment that's very attractive to employees coming into the workforce with very different attitudes? And I think, a number of the accounting firms have actually made strides in this area, everything from compressed schedules to teleworking to flex time to sabbaticals and, prolonged vacations. And that to me is exciting because not all firms are on that curve. Let's face it, accounting is a tough job.
Yeah.
It's a tedious job. Your name is on that, that tax return. So there's a lot of pressure, there's cycles. And so you need to look at the environment and say, how do I design? Design mindset is a skill we talk about. How do we design that environment to maximize the productivity of our employees, given the realities of the industry? But at the same time, productivity means also, how do we keep them comfortable and happy?
Right. So, and that seems like really because you can get entrepreneurial employees. So if that's something I guess what are some, do you have some concrete tips for employers, for firm owners, for managing partners? What do they need to do? What are like a few things they can do to create an environment where these entrepreneurial employees can thrive? Because I guess because I have an experience. I was at a firm for about a year before I went into now I'm a CPA in business. But back then, I tried to get a client. I tried to get a new client for the firm. And after the whole thing was done, the managing partner, he came to me and said, "Hey, for your pay grade, you need to sit in your cubicle and you need to bang out some tax returns. Don't do that again." And I thought I was wowing him, but it obviously wasn't the right environment for me to be entrepreneurial. So what are some concrete things people can do to create a place where entrepreneurial employees can thrive?
Sure. And I can empathize with you because I think a lot of people have had that experience and were frustrated and have left. And that's why companies are paying attention now going, this is a brain drain and I can't have this anymore.
Right.
So I think culture is number one. You have to have a culture that's very positive and is attracting people, right? That they want to work there. They feel good about working there. They feel appreciated about working there. And I think the millennials, more than any other generation, is making us pay attention to that. I don't want that annual review. I want real-time feedback every day.
Yeah.
Right? Number two is the work environment. Are you technology advanced, right? Because a lot of, let's face it, every generation is more and more technical. So we need to make sure they have the tools so that they can work in the environment, but also have the offerings of teleworking. And a lot of accountants I meet now are very excited that firms are offering teleworking and other configurations so that they can have lives. So I think that's important.
And let me ask you a question there. So in terms of that stuff, is the whole purpose of integrating those sorts of technologies to give these entrepreneurial employees more autonomy? Is the idea to give them more autonomy with that?
Well, a lot of that has to do with work-life balance. I mean, these are people going in the office working 15 hours a day, not seeing their families, right? And it's a very traditional approach to work. It's work and then home. And the reality is today people are working, life is 24/7 integrated. So we need to figure out ways that people can do their work at their right and have a life at home.
Gotcha.
Well, so 2.5 years ago in our firm, we shut the office down. That was awesome. We just went virtual. We wanted to see if we could do it. And we went through a few bumps. We implemented a ROW, which is, results only work environment. And really, we have no clue what any employee is doing. And we have about 8 people, scattered throughout the country. And they're stay-at-home moms. And they're freaking awesome. Oh my gosh, they're amazing. When they do work, and they don't mess around. But they get to do it any way they want to do it. And I think making those large disruptive changes to a firm really just scares people so badly. They're not ready or willing to do it. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, and you have to, also it varies by the firm, the industry, client work. Where is it done? Is it done at the client side? Is it brought in? I appreciate, your comments, because I also ran a very large virtual organization of 65,
Wow.
and it was highly productive, but it is setting up the measurements and the metrics very differently so that people feel like they have responsibility and they know exactly what they're doing, even though
Right.
they're
Yeah.
in their own environment. So yes, every industry is different. But to your other point, some of the things that accountants tell me they really appreciate, some of the benefits is this work-life balance, which can include, sabbatical leaves, medical leaves, parental leaves, vacation shutdowns, right? Christmas and summer where everybody's off, so they feel, they can do stuff, but also career pathing. Letting people know what opportunities they have or they don't have when they arrive at the firm. And then also, can I support you through training, mentoring, coaching, and tuition reimbursement so that if you need certain certifications. And another area is just exposure, exposing people to other parts or other clients so that they are well balanced and they understand the complexities of the business so they can move ahead. So I think those are some of the things that people say they appreciate.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Good.
one thing, again, obviously, when we went virtual as a firm, one thing we wanted to leverage was access to some of the best team members, anywhere in the country. We didn't like being hemmed in by a zip code, and I think your book makes a lot of points about the globalization, of our world and how that's impacting work and employees. So globalization, I guess, is a huge part of getting clients, again, for accounting firms and hiring new talent too, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I call it from eBay to Elance.
Okay.
eBay or Etsy, right, to
Yeah.
Elance. These are marketplaces,
Yep.
right? And on eBay, I can go out, and I have started a business in less than an hour and collected international currency. I couldn't do that when I was young.
So cool.
So all of a sudden everybody's global. But there's Elance, which I also use because I can find talented researchers, writers, statistics people, videographers, for lower cost than having a full-time employee. So, the dynamics have changed, and a lot of that is because technology has flattened it, flat world labor,
Yeah.
but some people term it as, so you can actually find talented people. Well, talented people want to live where they are, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So you're living in a beautiful part of the world and you may not want to move. So how do I connect you? Again, here comes back the technology piece. How do I connect you and enable you really to work in an environment that you're the most productive? And so I think as organizations like yours realize that talent doesn't always want to move.
Right.
They don't want to live in certain environments or be boxed in. How do I connect them securely, right, and safely so that they can work from where they are?
Gotcha.
Go ahead, Greg.
Well, I was gonna ask a question for Courtney. Courtney, could you explain this? I know that you mentioned in some of the stuff that I read, you mentioned a T-shaped worker, and I know I've worked with many pear-shaped workers. I have not, as far as I know, not worked with any T-shaped workers. What is the T-shaped worker? And we talked about a transdisciplinary worker, and so I don't know if that's the same thing. Could you explain T-shaped worker and how that lines up with transdisciplinary?
Sure. So the T-shaped worker is somebody who has very deep expertise in one area. That would be the long bar of the letter T.
Okay.
But somebody who also has working knowledge of several other subject areas, which would be the crossbar of the T. So, for example, if your expertise is in marketing, but you also know a little bit about web design, and you also know a little bit about finance, and you also know a little bit about video production, you are better able to collaborate with coworkers from those different areas of your company or your firm.
Gotcha.
So would it make sense? Like, what if an accountant was really creative, and they noticed that most CPA firm websites are just total junk? Can they start their own agency serving CPAs and building websites for them, even though they were a CPA? Is that kind of something similar to that?
That may be an example. That person might want to partner with somebody who is first and foremost a web designer.
Yeah, probably.
Who knows a little bit about accounting too, but they would be probably really well positioned to, because they speak the language of accountants and they know what accountants' clients are looking for,
Yeah.
what they see when they're on a site.
So that was a safe way to say CPA should not be designing websites. Give me a break.
Well, let me just put
Yeah.
that into context, because I work with a lot of companies that are struggling with this, right? And they went through a wave where the generalist skills were highly valued. Can you run an organization? Can you run a budget? Can you manage a team or individuals? And then we went through a wave where, we wanted specialization. A lot of our sectors got very specialized. And then technology came on the scene, and then we hired a lot of people who just understood the technology in our industry. Well, today it's much more complicated. You actually need someone who's a generalist and a specialist and is technical, right? So that you make the right choices. I mean, a case in point, a very simple one you can understand is hospitality. It's about being able to understand the hotel industry, yet Travel Advisor and Yelp, right? And then online bookings. And, a lot of the complexities of the hotel industry is much more today in a digital world. So I think a T person is really this higher level skilled person who can develop strategy because they understand technology, because they understand the business, and because they understand how to operate in management, and have general skills as well.
Very cool. So I have a question. Your book does focus on a little bit of the issue of retention, and our profession. Anytime they're surveyed, they think about that. Employee retention. How do we keep people? But I mean, should we spin that around and go, well, how do we make this the best place for people to work when it's right for them, and help them transition to other areas of work when it's right for them to leave? I mean, should we change our mindset as firm owners?
Yes, and I think you're bringing up some very good points. And companies are doing this today. They're saying, you know what, I need to give people lateral move opportunities. I need to have them participate on cross-functional teams. I need to give them internships and externships, to your point. Why can't they rotate out to a customer for a while to get that perspective? But to your other point is, if an employee isn't a fit in my firm, I need to make sure, because they're working 15, 18 hours a day, can I find them a fit somewhere else where they can be happier, more productive? So I think companies are starting to think through some of these issues about retention and attraction, because, it is someone's life, it's someone's livelihood, and it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to.
That's why you guys made a really important emphasis on culture. It seems like you're saying, if you want retention to be better, you need to fix some of your culture issues. That's kind of what allows retention to improve, I would imagine.
Yeah, the culture needs to be, I think what our younger generation has brought to our attention is they really want to be at firms that have strong cultures, that are visionary and aspirational.
Cool.
That we want to know that this firm is transparent, ethical, has, a higher calling, because that has more meaning to employees. Not that we're just crunching numbers and I go to work to crunch numbers, but maybe I'm solving a tax issue, a global tax issue, in some way. So I think those are things that our younger generation has really brought to our attention, and companies are saying, you know what, I really do need to do that. The Apple computers were very visionary, and the Starbucks are viewed, as aspirational. How can I solve a larger problem in the world?
Okay, so so we're going to help Greg Kite with his some employee issues. So Greg Kite, let's say he's around mid-40s, and Greg, you've already reinvented your job before. You were a math teacher,
right? Yeah, not so much reinvented my job, just totally made a massive career change that reinvented me from middle school math teacher to accountant, to CPA.
Right. So you did that, and you were successful. So, Tracy, if Greg is going to reinvent himself now, realizing he probably has another 30, 40, 50 years to work, like what are skills he needs to be improving? Maybe his people skills for sure, but what else should he be working on to build a new career possibly?
Or even to make myself more transdisciplinary or T-shaped, because I think in accounting, it's so tempting to just, because like Courtney, you were saying, the vertical part of the T, that means we need to be subject experts in something where we know it all. And with accounting, you never get to the bottom of that well. There's always stuff that you don't know in the tax code. There's always stuff that you could do better in terms of even bringing in technology today. So how would someone like me become a better T-shaped worker?
Yeah, so what I would say is, number one, you have to figure out what you like to do, that you do well, that you're well enough to get paid for
Cool.
for the
Okay.
long term, right? So number one is you have to do a self-assessment. You know, what makes sense for you. There may be a specialization that you would like to go towards, because as you said, the tax code could be an endless well. Is
Yeah.
there something that you can specialize in? I think number two is all of us have to look at the technologies that are in our industry. You know, what are one or two technologies that I should be aware of, because it could, you know, replace or transition me out of a job, you know,
Yeah.
whether like Excel, you know, or Quicken for some people. So I think, you know, that's important. And then it's just setting your sights and being open to what are some of the emerging areas. You know, I think it's very exciting. You know, we didn't have wearable tech, for example.
Right.
You know, there's probably something emerging in your field that's quite exciting, that you could get in at the ground level on and redevelop that for the longer, you know, for the longer opportunity for yourself. So I think you have to keep your eyes and ears open, that, you know, it's not just about accounting. You know, what are some of the emerging areas in accounting that might be of interest to you that you could, you know, look at. And, you know, the other thing is when people are looking for jobs, is I always encourage them, look at competitors and look at vendors and customers. You know, are they maybe doing something that you're really interested in? Because that's an easier transition than to another field, because you already understand, you know, half of their inner workings, and they know that you understand their accounting systems. And so these are ways that you can actually broaden yourself.
Right. That's great stuff. So with that, what's a good strategy? One of our favorite people in the whole world is Tom Hood. He's in charge of the Maryland Association of CPAs, and he has this thing that I think he might have even trademarked this now. It's his little it's an inequality that he put up that says L is greater than C, which means your rate of learning needs to be greater than the rate of change in the environment around you. What are some of the best ways? I mean, and again, I think this becomes such a huge issue if you're talking about a 70-year work life. What are the ways that people need to be the best strategies people have for learning more crap to keep themselves sharp and employable and in the game?
Well, we have a skill that we call cognitive load management, because you could,
Whoa.
yeah, it's how do I take all of this information and how do I synthesize it down to something that is realistic and relevant for me? Because you
Yeah.
can sit there and read for days and days and days. Right? So reading is really important, but it's what is it? What do I read? And so that's where I think the self-assessment piece has to come in, is you have to start to say, okay, let me at least set a goal for, I would like to be at this point, or I'd like to try this kind of job. And how do you find out about those? Well, the professional associations, as you mentioned, are great places to find out, you know, explore, you know, what kinds of jobs are out there, and then how do I target it? The planning piece is critical. I think you do have to sit down and say, okay, in the next 5 years, what are some targets or plans that I can strive for, so that you can accomplish it and then try something else? Because, you know, let's face it, you do have a long landscape. So you can do that today much more than in the past. I mean, you could have 7 careers. I mean, careers,
yeah.
not just jobs.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it takes the onus upon you to say, okay, what am I really good at? And I like to do that, I get paid well for. And what do I want to try next? And then just focus on that and say, let me try this. And then where will that lead me?
Right. And I can see ways where if you have an idea of where you think the next iteration is going to be for your own life, that as you pursue that, there's got to be ways where that can, I mean, probably not always, but more likely than not, there's going to be ways where you can integrate that new learning into whatever you're doing while you're learning that and preparing for that next phase.
That's right. It's iterations. I think that's a really good point that you make. It is, what is the next iteration of my career? What kind
Right.
of targets can I set? Because then all your energy will go towards that target and you'll get it done.
Yeah.
And then you'll have all these extra skills and then you'll set a new target. And then,
Right.
you can keep building on it. And by then, you know what? There might be a whole new industry that opened up that didn't exist 10 years ago that now
Yeah.
you're poised for. And so I think
Perfect.
it's setting the targets is critical for people today. And that's different because the companies used to take over that piece for us and they just don't
Right.
do that anymore.
Right, and that's the whole thing. Because one thing that keeps coming to mind, and maybe you even sparked this with the concept of cognitive load management, is just that we need to approach our entire careers kind of with sort of a project management mindset. Because I think so often I know I'm guilty of this, of making early decisions that set my trajectory for the future, and then just going on autopilot and just kind of
Yep.
letting things happen to me, rather than saying, nope, I've got to take control. Project management of my life is part of what I have to do, because I've got a long life and there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to happen. I don't want to be I don't want to be a 72-year-old guy who decided to retire and now I'm bored to death because I've already watched everything that comes up on the History Channel. I need to get some other idea going to make this life a life worth living. Take the reins. That's what you're saying, right, Tracy and Courtney?
Yeah.
Take the damn reins.
Yes, and also you don't want to be that 72-year-old person who has to work because you didn't save up enough money for your
Right.
retirement because you didn't even factor that into your project management plan. So it's a much more complex project management plan, but yeah, you do. You have to take the reins.
Well, this is
Yeah.
cool. All right, so we ran out of time, but we still want to ask you guys some great things on our secret stash. So, Dr. Tracy, Dr. Courtney, thank you guys for being with us on the Thrivecast. We
Big
appreciate it.
time. Yeah, great
Thank
stuff.
you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, there they
was
were,
awesome.
Dr. Courtney
That's
Vien
awesome.
and Dr. Tracy Wilen.
Wilen.
I almost said Chapman, but that's
No,
Tracy Chapman.
that's not her
is
name. And they were the
singer.
authors of Employed for Life, which you look in the show notes below you people if you're looking at your phone or your computer, and you'll see a link to that PDF book. It's a short one, but it's they researched a lot of stuff to build this book, and it's really good
Yep.
stuff.
And I think they got so much great stuff, not just about looking at, I think looking at our own careers and looking big scale, large scale, and trying to figure out what's next and being very intentional with what that's going to look like. That's huge. And not just for you, but I think that one of the things that Dr. Tracy said was that's helpful for employees. That's one of the ways to get your entrepreneurial employees and to stick with them, is to not just look at that project management approach to your own career, but also help your rock stars do the same for them. That's us. That's it.
That's a wrap.
Episode 45.
Episode 45. Thank you again so much for Zoho.com/books as a sponsor. We couldn't do it without you